morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our virtual version of Golden Triangle Days for 2021. I'm Bill Allen, CEO of the Greater Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, and with me live are Ms. Pat Avery, CEO of the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce, and Ms. Ida Shasho, who is the CEO of the Greater Orange Area Chamber of Commerce. Together, all of the area chambers contribute to the Golden Triangle Days. Today's virtual event is a culmination of work done by all 8 chambers, and those chambers include the Bridge City Chamber of Commerce, Greater Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, Greater Orange Chamber of Commerce, Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce, the Groves Chamber of Commerce, Nederland Chamber of Commerce, Port Neches Chamber of Commerce, and the Viter Chamber of Commerce. I want to say thanks to our committee and our staffs and all the volunteers that have helped to make this a reality today. So, all of you out there, thanks for joining us. We're going to be employing a lot of technology today to offer you an in-depth look into the region and information that we believe is important for our long-term success. You know, typically, we host 250 to 300 delegates in Austin for this event. Now, while a good number of folks that I've spoken with are a bit sad that we're not able to be there and roam the halls of the Capitol, eat some fantastic gumbo, this virtual version does have one major upside. It exposes a greater number of people to some of the issues that we're working on here to benefit the business community. For example, the Golden Triangle Business Roundtable has a monthly luncheon, and I believe that they are using this event to be their monthly luncheon. So shout out to Dennis Isaacs and all the folks in the GTBR for joining us today. Really want to recognize our sponsors for today's event. We truly appreciate their support. Obviously, we can't do what we do without it. So our platinum sponsors for today are Entergy Texas, Exxonmobil, Golden Pass LNG, Total Petrochemicals and Refining USA, and Valero Port Arthur Refinery.
Hi, everyone. My name's Pat Avery. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Port Arthur Chamber of Commerce. Welcome today. To set the stage for what you're going to see a bit later this morning, we feel that it's first important to let you know that we don't simply get together as a region and develop the legislative agenda. That is only one step. We also follow the session. We track the outcomes. For example, did you know that in the session of 2019, there were over 7,000 bills introduced to the legislature? Not all of them, of course, made it to the floor for a vote. Our Golden Triangle Days legislative agenda for that period had 17 items, either supporting or opposing legislation that we felt that was important to our growth in our region. And 7 of those items were voted on into law and signed by our governor in 2019. I would like to highlight those successes to you at this moment. House Bill 3143 provided for much needed incentive to help keep us competitive when we go after economic development projects. Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 3650 addressed skilled training. And of course, those two things go hand in hand when you're talking about economic development. House Bill 3, Senate Bill 1679 provided incentive for schools with graduates in high demand fields. Senate Bill 2 assisted in funding for all of our local colleges and universities. Senate Bill 698 focused on state control of the environmental permitting process. This also linked back to economic development, and Senate Bill 7 and 1082 worked to restore hurricane-damaged beaches and coastal wetlands. House Bill 1900 and Senate Bills 7, 8, and 615 restructured catastrophic funding for insurance for coastal communities. And finally, Senate Bill 69 enhanced the competitive position of Texas ports. And as you know, we have 3 of them in our region. And finally, House Bill 3850 supported the Sabine Neches Waterway Improvement Project. And we all know how crucial that is to the Golden Triangle area. So, on to 2021. We want to show you a video that provides a high-level look at our legislative agenda. On your page, on your YouTube page, your channel, you need to, that you use to log in today, there should be a link to a more detailed version of our legislative agenda. It's going to be in PDF form, and you can download that and print it if you'd like. Okay, it's time. Let's take a look at the Golden Triangle legislative agenda. Thank you.
What does Southeast Texas mean to the state and the nation? Hi, I'm Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick.
Hi, I'm Judge John Gauthier with Orange County.
And I'm Vanessa Broussard. We're excited to share how you can strengthen the state of Texas through the Golden Triangle's legislative agenda.
Southeast Texas, which includes Jefferson and Orange counties, is a major player in the economy of Texas, the United States, and the world.
This area, known as the Golden Triangle, is where our country's energy independence begins.
We are, to name a few, home to the largest single refinery in the United States.
We're home to the largest methanol facility in the U.S.
Home to 4 major refineries that produce 60% of the nation's commercial jet fuel and the majority of the United States military jet fuel.
We're home to over 35 chemical and petrochemical facilities.
Home to the largest liquid natural gas exporter in the United States.
Home to the Department of Energy's Strategic Petroleum Reserve intake, which accounts for 57% of the nation's crude oil reserve.
Home to the Sabine Neches Waterway, the #1 bulk cargo waterway in the United States.
Our area is the origin for 3 major petroleum products pipelines, supplying the entire eastern and middle United States with transportation and heating fuel.
We accomplished this all while maintaining state air quality standards.
Jointly, the Sabine Neches Waterway, comprised of the ports of Beaumont, Port Arthur, and Sabine Pass in Jefferson County, and the Port of Orange in Orange County, operate as the 3rd largest port waterway complex in the nation in terms of tonnage.
And it is home to 2 strategic military ports that function as the nation's #1 commercial military outload port.
Current annual economic benefits of the waterway of the area include more than $13 billion and more than 128,000 permanent jobs.
These benefits extend throughout the state of Texas and the United States as a whole.
An approved $1.4 billion waterway deepening project will improve vessel capacity by 25%, providing our area with ample expansion capabilities along the waterway.
In addition to refining capacity, the Southeast Texas chemical manufacturing sector is the 2nd largest manufacturing industry in the state and helps make Texas the largest chemical producing state in the nation.
With $54 billion in planned expansion projects, Golden Triangle is set to become the nation's largest refining complex and is projected to become the largest LNG exporter in the U.S.
So how can you help us facilitate future growth and drive positive results for Texas and the United States.
Work with us on our legislative agenda for the area. It will go a long way to support the Golden Triangle and the state's economy.
We have established 6 major legislative areas of concentration for 2021. You can help the economic development of Southeast Texas in the following ways. You can help expedite the permitting process to move projects forward, creating jobs and upgrading infrastructure. You can support the continuation and revision of the Chapter 313 tax code to enable Texas to compete for major capital-intensive projects. You can support incentives and the adaptability of economic programs used for business attraction and retention, including the Texas Enterprise Zone Program, Texas Enterprise Fund, tax incentives under the Texas Economic Development Act, with focus on school value limitation, the use of tax abatements, tax increment financing, reinvestment zones, R&D tax credits, and the $1 million small business franchise tax exemption, all of which promote economic development and job creation. You can support the deployment of improved infrastructure services throughout Southeast Texas to serve the industrial, commercial, and residential expansion needs of the region.
You can help the transportation, energy, and infrastructure of Southeast Texas in the following ways. You can support improving drainage features for future and completed TxDOT projects. You can support a modernized electric grid that provides Texans with reliable long-term service. You can develop plans and resources needed for greater broadband connectivity to enhance access to public education, healthcare, employment, news, and information. You can support the Sabine-Neches Waterway Improvement Project. You can support the creation of the Gulf Coast Protection District as the entity to manage and maintain the levee for coastal Texas and for all counties to have fair representation on the board. You can also support the additional funding needed to continue moving this project forward. You can support the evaluation and ultimate rework of Highway 87 and Highway 82 to support industry expansion, the workforce, and residents, which will also serve as a safe means of evacuation in the event of an industrial accident, explosion, or hurricane.
You can help the education and workforce development of the Golden Triangle in the following ways. You can support the adequate funding for Lamar University, Lamar State College Orange, Lamar State College Port Arthur, and Lamar Institute of Technology, consistent with their growth and the needs of our future workforce. This includes parity in the funding formula for our state colleges to match what is received by other two-year college peers in Texas. You can support funding for the establishment of a carbon technology commercialization center on the Lamar University campus. You can support legislation that incentivizes public school districts, community colleges, technical schools, and universities to increase the number of graduates in critical fields, including the promotion of dual credit programs and promoting academic excellence in public schools with the emphasis on math, science, and skills required in the modern workplace, as well as the promotion of career and technical education as career pathways. You can support programs at the primary and secondary level to create awareness and expose students to in-demand careers and emerging career opportunities and industries. You can help the environmental quality and stewardship of the Golden Triangle in the following ways. You can support efforts within the state water plan that would ensure adequate water supply throughout the state that does not infringe on Southeast Texas, preserving junior water rights protection from legislation on water resources and adequately compensating areas with surplus water resources as part of a comprehensive state water planning effort. You can support efforts to create and fund a voluntary program that addresses carbon emissions through grants and rebates similar to the Texas Emission Reduction Plan. You can support efforts to restore the hurricane-damaged beaches and coastal wetlands, which serve as natural barriers for residential communities and industrial assets. You can support efforts continuing to plan, implement, and adequately fund the Texas State Flood Infrastructure Fund to meet the statewide effort to help protect urban and rural Texas from flood and natural flood-related events and the associated loss of life and economic costs.
You can help the Golden Triangle with insurance and taxes in the following ways. You can support legislation that prohibits a homeowner from paying more than one named storm hurricane deductible in the same hurricane season. You can also oppose any unfunded mandates from the state on local entities. And you can oppose legislation imposing a revenue and/or tax cap on cities and counties. You can oppose any rate increases for windstorm insurance until a consistent manner of statewide sharing of premiums for all weather-related catastrophes under one format is investigated. And finally, you can oppose any limitations on overall city expenditures, exclusion of the new property adjustment and effective rate and rollback rate calculations, or legislation that lowers the rollback rate, giving a city council the option to re-raise the rollback rate.
You can help the healthcare sector of the Golden Triangle in the following ways. You can help by removing all obstacles for counties without hospitals to serve the needs of the community. You can support retaining dedicated funding sources for critical local trauma services and promptly distributing those funds to hospitals and physicians who provide uncompensated emergency services. You can support programs for the mentally ill and for the developmentally disabled. You can support additional funding to ensure timely and appropriate access to inpatient and outpatient community-based services and supports for Texans with a behavioral health diagnosis. You can support the expansion of graduate medical education funding to underwrite the cost and add additional residency positions in order to increase available physicians for areas with the greatest need. You can help by correcting the disadvantage community hospitals have when it comes to reimbursement, technology, and infrastructure. Currently, tertiary hospitals receive proportionally higher state disproportionate share payments, which permits investment in technology, infrastructure, and facilities. And as a result, community hospitals lag behind and therefore are unable to compete with urban medical centers. You can support improved access to telehealth opportunities.
Our agenda is designed to enable growth in the state and improve quality of life in the region.
With Texas's governmental expenditures for all counties at $98.3 billion, Southeast Texas is receiving less than 1%. The current allocation of funds fails to represent Southeast Texas's 1.53% of the GDP by over 30%.
This disparity will be even greater after the completion of the $54 billion in expansion projects in process.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2021 legislative session will be challenging for all concerned.
When making critical decisions, we ask that you keep in mind the impact that the Golden Triangle has on the state of Texas.
The Golden Triangle region: energy, national security, and strategic value.
We have one other sponsor that we wish to acknowledge at this particular time, and that is Sabine River Ford for sponsoring our legislative agenda. Thank you so much, Sabine River Ford. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video. I'm sure that you heard the emphasis on the word you, as in you can support. The reason why this is important, an important part of our video, is that we plan to divide the video into our major segments and send them to the legislators who are on those who are on those committees, such as the Transportation and Infrastructure portion of our video will be sent to all the legislators that sit on that committee. We want to thank Americom Marketing for their partnership putting our video together for us. Next, we are going to hear from our local state elected officials who have generously taken a few minutes of their time from their busy schedules during the legislative session to speak to us live in Austin.
Hello, Southeast Texans. I'm Sean Ryan, president of Golden Pass LNG, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today for Golden Triangle Days. The vision of Golden Pass is to be the premier liquefied natural gas exporter in North America. I am so proud to say that with your continued support and the support of our elected officials, we are well on our way to doing just that. The construction of our $10 billion export project in Sabine Pass, Texas, began almost 2 years ago and represents one of the largest private investments in Texas, if not the entire country. The investment will generate hundreds of direct jobs, enhance U.S. energy security, and help bring clean energy from Texas to power the world. Southeast Texas is our home, and we're excited to play a role in the economic development of the region. I have the distinct honor of introducing Speaker Dade Phelan, a great friend and champion of Golden Pass LNG, who, in his fourth term as state representative for District 21, was elected the 76th Speaker of the Texas House of Representatives by an overwhelming majority of his peers. Prior to serving as Speaker, he served as Chair of the House Committee on State Affairs, as Vice Chair of the Natural Resources Committee, and as member of Calendars, Appropriations, and Elections Committees, as well as the Select Committee on Ports, Innovation, and Infrastructure. In these varying capacities, Speaker Phelan earned numerous accolades. He was named by Texas Monthly as one of the best legislators in the 86th legislative session in the 2019 Capitol Inside's Most Valuable Sophomore Member in 2017. He also earned the designation of Guardian of Small Business by the National Federation of Independent Businesses and Fighter for Free Enterprise by the Texas Association of Business. Of course, none of this comes as a surprise to many of us. Born and raised in Southeast Texas, Speaker Phelan's service extends well beyond the Capitol grounds. He is a former two-time governor appointee to the Lower Neches Valley Authority. He has served on many boards, including the Texas Lyceum, Southeast Texas CASA, the Golden Triangle Coastal Conservation Association, and Catholic Charities of Southeast Texas. Very few others have a better understanding of economic development and growth trends in Southeast Texas as Speaker Phelan. He works as a real estate developer at his family's fourth-generation commercial real estate development firm in Beaumont, which owns and manages retail, industrial, and commercial properties in Texas and Arkansas. His wife, Kim, is a solo practitioner attorney, and together they have 4 sons, Ford, Mac, Hank, and Luke. He and his family reside together in Southeast Texas. He received his bachelor's degree in government and business from the University of Texas at Austin. Please join me in welcoming Speaker Dade Phelan.
Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, we're doing this virtual. To be completely honest with you all today, I've kind of zoomed out, and I've pretty much committed to not doing Zooms anymore, regardless of who's asking. But I made obviously an exception for Golden Triangle Days. But I do appreciate y'all having me on today, and I really wish y'all could be here in Austin today in this week. It's probably the greatest travesty of the COVID-19 and the pandemic is the loss of the one-on-one contact that we all, really enjoy, and the in-person advocacy of groups like Golden Triangles. It's important to be face-to-face when you're talking about issues that matter most to your community. There's only so much you can do virtually, but I do appreciate the opportunity. It is, we're about 2 months into session, and we're about where we typically are, believe it or not. And this time we have a constitutional restriction that will not allow us to hear bills on the House floor for the first 60 days. And that 60th day is Friday. It's also the last day you can file bills in the Texas legislature. So this week really marks the beginning, in my opinion, of session. Every session, right around spring break, the week before spring break, things really take off here at the Texas Capitol. Every committee is hearing bills this week. Some are voting bills out of committee this week. So we will have a floor calendar in the coming probably 10 to 12 days, maybe, which is actually ahead of schedule. But you know, we have a pandemic that we're obviously dealing with. It wrecked our budget. We were supposed to have a $8 billion surplus going into the 2021 legislative session. Instead, we originally, about 6 months ago, had a $5 billion deficit. That is now right around $900 million because the economy has improved, and we've had some federal CARES Act, Act 1 and 2. Now we have a third federal CARES Act that's coming as well. So things are improving the budget front. We also have redistricting, which is another constitutional requirement, something we must get done this session. And then, of course, we had this Arctic storm 3 weeks ago, which really, you know, obviously I did not have on my bingo card for 2021, an Arctic storm that cost millions and millions of their electricity and really damaged homes and businesses and schools and churches all across the state of Texas. So we unveiled 7 bills over the weekend to address that, but that's also a huge issue that we're dealing with this session. But, you know, I'm still House District 21. I'm still the state representative from Southeast Texas. When I first became speaker, I had a gentleman call me from Southeast Texas wondering if it's okay if he announced to run for my seat. I think he thought for some reason I was no longer a state representative. So I wrote his name down. I'm gonna keep my eye on that person. He's obviously wants to be a state representative, but the truth is I'm still representing Southeast Texas like I always have. I just wear an additional hat, and I have 149 new constituents, and those 149 constituents are state representatives, type A personalities like myself. So it's a bit like herding cats. Like any speaker would say, a lot of personalities to deal with and a lot of challenges, but I'm enjoying the job so much. I really appreciate the faith and the confidence that my colleagues have placed in me. I never thought I'd be sitting here in this office or standing on the dais with the gavel, but here I am. It's a great opportunity for Southeast Texas. First speaker in the history of the state from Southeast Texas, 172 years in the making. But here we are, and we're going to make the most of it. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I don't know how to. See, I don't see any questions in the queue. Is there a moderator or? Okay, well, I don't see any questions in the queue, and unless a moderator jumps up, I will end my remarks. All right, going once. Going twice. All right. Well, I will leave the studio. I appreciate y'all. I wish y'all were here in person. We truly miss y'all. Maybe later on in the session, as the vaccine gets rolled out a little bit more in Southeast Texas and across the state, we will have the opportunity to meet in person here in session. I do have one question from Peyton. Saw some news from your office about some changes coming to the state grid operations. Can you talk a little bit about those? Well, thank you, Peyton. There's actually quite a few. We filed 7 bills over the weekend, and I actually have a couple more that we will file this week, but they're pretty comprehensive. One restructures the ERCOT board. In Southeast Texas, we're not on ERCOT, we're on MISO, and that's one of the reasons that we did not lose power like the rest of the state did. 90% of the state of Texas is on ERCOT, which is a grid wholly contained within the state of Texas. We're going to restructure that board, make sure that those are Texans on that board. The the chair of the board was living in Michigan. There were a couple of members on the board that did not even live in the United States. So we're going to make sure those are Texans. We're going to have some more transparency and accountability because the speakers are going to put someone on the board. The lieutenant governor will, the governor put 2 on the board, one of which must be a advocate for the taxpayer, a public member. And so they're going to be accountable to us. As my designee, I will put someone on that board who will respond to my questions and keep my office informed of the ERCOT decisions. ERCOT is not a state agency. It's actually a nonprofit. It's a very strange setup that was actually done in the 1970s. So we're going to restructure that. We're going to talk about weatherization of generation facilities, weatherization of gas line facilities. We're going to make certain, Joe Decitel from Jefferson County, my colleague, he has a bill that would prohibit, local government from the banning the use of natural gas in their jurisdictions. There are some very large cities in Texas that floated out proposals that as soon as 2030, which is very, very soon, 9 years from now, as soon as 2030, you cannot build any building that has a natural gas connection to it. It's their way of moving towards kind of the Green New Deal and getting away from fossil fuels. But natural gas is so abundant in Texas, it's inexpensive and it's clean burning. It's come a long way. So there's a lot of talk about doing that as well, getting rid of all fossil fuels. We're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to let the consumer decide what they want in their homes. And there's also discussions about some of the wholesale pricing. When you're in the deregulated market, you can actually be on a payment plan that follows the wholesale price. Well, when the wholesale price goes from $19 a megawatt hour to $9,000 a megawatt hour, you're going to get a bill that instead of $200 a month is $15,000. So we're going to get rid of that pricing option and actually pretty much ban it from the marketplace. But other than that, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. But it's a huge issue for the entire state of Texas. It cannot happen again. We also cannot do anything that negatively impacts our summer months because Texas is more accustomed to heat than freezing temperatures. And we need to be mindful of June, July, and August. So with that being said, I appreciate y'all. They said for me to wrap it up, y'all have a pretty tight agenda, so I will do just that. If any of y'all make it up to Austin, give us a holler, drop by. We'd love to have y'all. The speaker's office is y'all's office. And as always, I have an open door policy. So with that, I will jump off and let you get back to your agenda, but happy Golden Triangle Days. And next session, we'll do it right in downtown Austin. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Speaker Phelan. We'll now hear from Entergy's own Pam Williams.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pam Williams with Intergy Texas, and I have the privilege of introducing Senator Robert Nichols to you this morning. Senator Nichols was elected to the Texas Senate in 2007 and represents 19 counties, including the greater part of East Texas and Montgomery County. Senator Nichols always provides guidance and support for Southeast Texas, and we appreciate him here at Intergy. He has authored several pieces of legislation important to us all. Collectively, we benefit from his continued leadership in Austin. He serves as chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee and serves on the Finance, Administration, and Business and Commerce Committees. He's a member of the Legislative Audit Committee and currently serving his second term on the Sunset Advisory Commission. During his 6 sessions as a state senator, he authored and passed legislation to protect landowners' rights, increase educational opportunities in East Texas, and reform transportation policies. He has also worked to reduce Medicaid fraud and promote free market principles. He was designated as a top legislator by Texas Insider, a champion of free enterprise by the Texas Association of Business, and a courageous conservative by the Texas Conservative Coalition and a top 10 best legislator for the 85th legislative session by Texas Monthly Magazine. Before running for Senate, he served as Transportation Commissioner for 8 years, where he established a reputation for increasing efficiency without compromising quality. Senator Nichols is a businessman from Jacksonville, Texas. In his hometown, he served on city council, was elected mayor, built 4 successful manufacturing facilities, earned 32 U.S. patents, and created more than 900 jobs for East Texas families. Working his way through college by selling fireworks and ironing clothes for other students, Senator Nichols earned a bachelor's degree from our own Lamar University in 1968. He married his high school sweetheart, Donna, and they are the proud parents of 3 children, Brittany, Joshua, and Colin Ray. He is a member of the First United Methodist Church in Jacksonville. With pleasure, I turn it over to you, Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Pam Williams from Intergy. Unfortunately, Senator Nichols was called away on urgent state business and will not be able to join us after all. So we will go right into the Exxonmobil introduction. I'm sorry. What is it?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Chavez, General Manager at Total Port Arthur Refinery. Total takes pride in being a good neighbor in the Southeast Texas community. We are the 4th largest publicly traded oil and gas integrated company in the world, operating in more than 130 countries across the globe. Total Port Arthur Refinery has more than 600 employees who live and work in Southeast Texas. That is why we are proud to support this year's virtual Golden Triangle Days. It is my honor to introduce Representative Joe Decitel. Representative Decitel represents the 22nd District, which comprises most of Jefferson County. He is an attorney, businessman, and lifelong resident of Beaumont, Texas, who has served in the Texas legislature for the past 20 years. Prior to serving in the legislature, Representative Decitel served on the Beaumont City Council and was appointed by Governor White to the Job Training Coordinating Council and Lamar University Board of Regents. He has a strong record as a champion of civil rights and civic responsibility, organizing Lamar University's first NAACP chapter. Joe also served as Vice President for Administration and Legal Counsel of Lamar University Beaumont. Representative Decitel brings experience, insight, and knowledgeable leadership to the issue of public education and economic development. Please welcome Representative Joe Decitel.
Oh, thank you very much for that great introduction. I'm happy to participate in Golden Triangle Days. We certainly do miss you all being up here and the receptions that we normally have and visiting with everyone in our different offices. Well, because of COVID, you know, all that is totally different. We're busy here regardless. We thought it was going to be sort of a slower session until the event from 2 weeks ago, and the freeze has really changed the trajectory of the session, and there's a lot of concentration now on energy and energy availability, electricity, and to guarantee assure our citizens that we don't experience what we experienced a few weeks ago. We were fortunate down in District 22 to be outside of ERCOT with Intergy, which they did have rolling blackouts, but didn't have to experience in our area, in most of our area, what was experienced in other parts of the state where there were a day or 3, 4, 5 days of no power. As you know, we had extensive hearings on this issue, and I've been tapped to carry one of the significant pieces of legislation in a package of about 5 or 6 bills to help ensure the reliability of power in the future. So I appreciate the speaker having confidence in me to carry this legislation, which some cities, for instance, were restricting new construction and requiring homeowners to have, for instance, all electric homes and not have the availability to have gas stoves or gas operated equipment, which we saw recently. Those who did have, gas burning fireplaces and gas burning stoves, that's the only way they were able to keep their homes warm. So this piece of one of the pieces of legislation in the package would allow people to have their choice of energy that they want in their homes. There are other pieces of legislation that deals with ERCOT, and I think the speaker went over some of those issues that we'll be dealing with, or will be guaranteeing reliable electricity in the future. I laid out one of my bills this morning. The first one that I laid out is the Ban the Box bill, which is an employment related bill, and looks like this session it has a tremendous amount of support. It's the 4th or 5th session I worked on this piece of legislation, and basically what it does is prohibit employers from asking a question of criminal history on the job application itself. It does not prevent them from asking the question. It's just it won't be on the application, so that the application isn't discarded before they even look at the person's qualifications or abilities. If a person is called in for an interview because of what's on the application and the employer thinks that this may be a good employee, then they certainly do have the right to ask them, have they ever been arrested or convicted or of any misdemeanor or felony. But to have that on the application itself, examples we usually give is you got to hire 1 or 2 people. You have 20 applicants. Right at the top of the application, there's a check mark on, have you ever been arrested? You just many people would throw it to the side and go to one that doesn't have that. And that may be a very explainable situation and maybe your best choice in the whole stack. So this piece of legislation removes it from the application form, but certainly does not remove it from the application process. It just gives you a chance to get your foot in the door, give the employer a chance to get to know something about you besides the fact that you've been arrested 20, 30 years ago on a minor offense of some sort. So that is part of the criminal justice reform that we'll be working on this session. There are other parts that they're going to be dealing with, expungement of records and second choice opportunities. Industry in our area, for instance, are having difficulty with the expansions coming, having qualified employees and an increased need in the workforce. So we're doing some legislative things that will give more opportunities to people and second chance to people who will otherwise make a great employee, but would not be given an opportunity under the current situation. I've been working on some other bills as well that will help continue to, the economic development and in our area, working on the financing necessary for continue the deepening and widening project down in Southeast Texas. So, I mean, there's a myriad of things going on here. It's just a lot different because we don't see our home people. We don't see a lot of visitors coming into our offices, which has always been important, because unless you come and visit and let us know some of the important things that you're needing in the area, sometimes we don't know about those. So my door's open anyway. If you come to Austin, don't hesitate to come by. We have an open door policy. It'd be great to see you. And I'm hoping that you're getting something out of this virtual event for our Golden Triangle Days. But I know we do miss the gumbo and barbecue this afternoon, but otherwise, we appreciate you attempting to do the best we can in meeting with us up here.
Thank you, Joe Decitel, and thank you, Total, Tom. As you all know, our legislators are very, very busy. Exxonmobil will come at the end, and they will introduce Senator Brandon Creighton towards the end of our program. So thank you so much, Joe, for those comments. At this time, we will have Valero to introduce Representative White.
Hello, my name is Barbara Phillips, and I'm very happy to be here today with you representing the Valero Port Arthur Refinery. Valero has been a part of the Port Arthur community for over 120 years, and we are very proud today to be able to sponsor the Golden Triangle Days. It is our honor and privilege to be able to introduce our State Representative, James White. State Representative James White is a native Texan born in Houston. He attended Houston ISD Public Schools before graduating with honors from Prairie View A&M University in 1986 with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Political Science. In addition, he completed his doctorate in Political Science at the University of Houston. The United States Congress commissioned Representative White as an officer of infantry in the U.S. Army. His service included an assignment with the Berlin Brigade from 1987 to 90 during the demise of the Soviet Union. After leaving the Army with an honorable discharge in 1992, he began a career as a public school educator in the Houston area. He continued his teaching career in Fort Bend, Livingston, and Woodville independent school districts. He taught United States history, Texas history, and geography at the secondary level. He also taught the U.S. government and economics at the collegiate and high school level. Representative White coached high school football, basketball, and soccer, and officiated youth sports. He was first elected to the Texas House of Representatives in 2010. Throughout his tenure in the legislature, he has been a strong advocate for the residents of District 19 and is committed to ensuring the people of Hardin, Jasper, Newton, Polk, and Tyler counties are well represented in the state legislature. He believes in the fundamental values of strong families, constitutional government, and economic prosperity. He has been recognized for practicing these core values through various awards. Currently, Representative White serves as chairman of the House Committee on Homeland Security and Public Safety and sits on the Corrections and Redistricting Committees. He has previously served on the County Affairs, Agriculture and Livestock, Human Trafficking, Juvenile Justice, and Family Issues, Emerging Issues in Law Enforcement, Transportation Planning, Mental Health, International Trade and Intergovernmental Affairs, Opioid and Substance Abuse, Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence, and Driver's License Issuance and Renewal Committees. In 2011, he passed House Bill 1503, allowing for the appointment of qualified peace officers to a polling station. Then in 2013, he passed HB 1129, creating a pilot program that allowed active duty military voters abroad the ability to cast their ballots in an efficient manner. The program was expanded statewide in 2015. This past session, his legislative office worked on legislation in reforming our correctional institutions. He sponsored Senate Bill 183, which imposed a criminal penalty on those who were charged of improper sexual conduct with juveniles in custody. Through State Bill 1024, Representative White authorized the Windham School District to provide credit leading to a high school diploma or certificate to TDCJ offender students who complete curriculum requirements. In addition, Representative White joint-sponsored body camera legislation that aids in reducing the number of false claims made against law enforcement officers and enhancing transparency during investigatory stops. Representative White also passed legislation affecting Texas youth in 2015. State Bill 409 limited access to and protected the confidential records of youth in the Juvenile Justice Information System. Furthermore, House Bill 2398 enhanced student school attendance and academic achievement. The legislation decriminalized truancy offenses, but maintained the criminal offense for adults that contribute to truancy. Representative White and his wife Jim reside in Tyler County, where he is a businessman and author. He attends and worships at Hillister Baptist Church. Additionally, he is an active member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, and the Texas Farm Bureau. It is my pleasure and privilege to be able to introduce to you Representative James White.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and most importantly, thank y'all immensely for having me on with you today. I understand that usually on most legislative sessions, we would have the opportunity to have you here in Austin, crawfish, oysters, and all the other treats and fine delicacies of Southeast Texas and all. But look, it's still a great opportunity to fellowship with you today. And I know for the Golden Triangle especially, we are extremely proud to have one of our own ascend to the position of Speaker of the House. Dave Phelan is a friend. He's a father. He's a husband. He's a businessman. He is a community leader. This man is a leader. And I think this is a great time for Southeast Texas and a very great time for Texas overall. Just think about Dave. This is a young man who has served as a staffer in Congress. He's built and maintained strong businesses in our communities. He's been a staffer up here in the Capitol. And I just think it's wonderful at this point in time in our country's history, in our state's history, that my friend Dave Phelan, a husband and a father with school-age children, is serving in the speakership. Now, why is that so important? It's so important because having Dave there, he was able to convey or close the deal. I think we were close to doing this anyway. I would hope we were, on ensuring that our public schools remained hold harmless for their budgets going through the rest of this school year. This would give our local school districts the certainty, the budgeting certainty to budget based on their enrollment as they were coming into this very challenging school year, and then make sure that they can maintain their staff levels. We think those kids are coming back to us in the fall. We know they're coming back to us in the fall, so we don't have any disruptions with our teachers and the services that our school provides. I think one reason we were able to close the deal on that again is because we have a father in the at the speaker's dais leading the House. He knows the challenges of families during this period of time. With that, I want to applaud our public school community, all of our education community, our small businesses, as they've tried to weather, and matter of fact, not tried successfully to the extent that they could, weather this pandemic. About a year ago, our state began its response to this pandemic. It's been very tough on our businesses. It presented some very unique challenges for our local school districts, but I've watched our local school districts, I've watched our teachers, our schools, auxiliary staff, the administrators. They have really met the challenge. They've got these kids back into these classrooms where they can get their education, and most importantly, where these kids can have some opportunities for certainty, being able to socialize in a positive manner, and guide them through this challenging time of this pandemic. And the Golden Triangle in our area it's all about industry. I love our area. I love my constituents. They're salt of the earth people. They work with their hands. They're small businessmen and women. They show up to work every morning. They have to show up to work every morning. They can't do everything through Zoom, or I think we're using StreamYard. They've got to show up to make their goods or sell their services. And so we've had some challenges with that through the COVID-19. The governor recently, as you know, he has rescinded most of his orders as it relates to COVID-19. This will ensure that our businesses can sit down with their risk management and legal consultants, open up responsibly, 100%, get our employers and employees back into their businesses, 100%, and continue to grow our local prosperity. With that, we learned 2 weeks ago or more that it is very important for society, for our industry, for our households. We must have energy and water. There's not much we can do without that. We knew that before the big freeze 21, the Texas freeze 21 occurred, but a lot of the concerns about the importance of our energy industry came to the forefront. Now, of course, here in the Golden Triangle, we're not in ERCOT, where 90% of Texas is located. We're in the MISO region, which relies heavily on natural gas, coal, nuclear. That's a good mix, 80% plus. That's a good mix. I think it's probably closer to 90%. That's a good baseload mix to ensure that we have reliable energy. But we do have some things we have to look at. Again, a businessman that lives in our community, Dave Phelan, he has put the House on a trajectory to ensure that our energy industry has the reliability, not just in the good times, but in the challenging times, to make sure that it's weatherized, that's winterized and summerized, to ensure that we have the appropriate baseload mix of reliable energy as well, to ensure that we are able in times of emergency to communicate directly with our people with the 21st century communication systems that they rely on to inform them about outages, to inform them about warming centers and any other information that's tangential to the disaster emergency situation. Again, it's Dave Phelan that has put us on the trajectory from a legislative standpoint to solve these issues over the next several weeks. So look, Golden Triangle, I love you. We have a great region. I've heard Dave say many times, if you've got your list of stuff that you need us to do for Southeast Texas, he said this, get your list out and get it to us. Okay, so I'm assuming something will happen if he gets it to us. I'm also extremely proud and honored that Dave has appointed me as chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety. As many of you know, for 2 previous sessions, I served as chair of the House Committee on Corrections. I'm still able to serve on that committee, not as chair, but as a member. I'm glad for that. But Dave gave me a call. At first, I was a little apprehensive, but he told me that based on the challenges that we have in Southeast Texas, responding to emergencies and disasters, as you know, in Southeast Texas, this has become something that we do, okay? And we're comfortable with it. We've got great teams of county judges and emergency management coordinators that help us navigate that, these events. But Dave said, because of the challenges that our area have here in Southeast Texas, the idea that we're very concerned with our ports about homeland security, the defense of our nation, and Homeland Security and Public Safety has the oversight of all law enforcement in Texas. We are extremely proud of our law enforcement in Southeast Texas, whether it's Game Warden Boone, with the Texas Game Wardens, our sheriffs, like Zena in Jefferson County, Mark Davis in Hardin County. We love our law enforcement folks. We love our police chiefs. We love our sheriff's deputies, our police officers, our school resource officers, and school police chiefs. We are behind our law enforcement. And because of our love for law enforcement and our work with law enforcement, Dave just said, I think you are the right person at the right time to help us lead on Homeland Security and public safety. So we have dived straight in. We've had many committee hearings about our disaster response due to the freeze, and not just due to the freeze, to many, many disasters that we've had in the past and that we may have in the future. We're very elated, and I'm just humbled that Dade had this type of confidence in me, because this committee, as I said, we oversight law enforcement. We oversight the apprehension of all criminals. When I say that, especially my wife, she gets a little tickled when I say all criminals, but we do. This committee has oversight over the apprehension of all criminals, the defense of the state and nation, to include oversight the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, which will have its sunset this session. Our great Texas Department of Public Safety, we also oversight that as well as disaster emergency communications, the Texas Emergency Council, and also Texas Crime Stoppers. So all of that is important to Texas. But as you know, in Southeast Texas, with the threats that we have from floods and hurricanes and other threats, this is a committee that is spot on for Southeast Texas. And because of that, I'm seeing a lot of our Southeast Texas friends at the committee hearings. I think Sheriff Hawthorne will be with us in a few days at a committee hearing, and also Sheriff Maddox out of Sabine County. So with that, if it's possible, I wanted to reserve some time, if there is time left, to field some, listen to some of your comments and concerns, and to include some of your questions as well. But I must say this again, I'm extremely proud to represent my fellow Southeast Texans in Polk, Tyler, Jasper, Newton, and Hardin County. We love our constituents. We adore Southeast Texas, and we're just elated to have the opportunity to stand in the gap for Southeast Texas for another session in the Texas legislature.
Thank you, Representative White. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Well, good morning. I'm Ida Chasso, and I am the CEO of the Greater Orange Area Chamber of Commerce. Next, we have a little surprise for you. While the objective of this event is to focus on statewide issues, it's safe to say that many of these issues on our agenda also cross over to the federal level. So with us today from Washington, D.C., we have our two congressmen that will represent our area to say a few words. First, we will hear from Congressman Brian Babin. Allow me to tell you a little bit about him. U.S. Congressman Brian Babin was sworn into the 114th Congress on January the 6th, 2015. As a lifelong resident of East Texas, he proudly serves the people of Texas' 36th Congressional District, including counties of Chambers, Liberty, Hardin, Polk, Tyler, Jasper, Newton, Orange, and a portion of southeastern Harris County. Congressman Babin was born in Port Arthur and grew up in Beaumont. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from our very own Lamar University and completed dental school at the University of Texas Dental Branch in Houston. He and his wife, Roxanne, were married in 1972. Babin served as an airborne artilleryman in the U.S. Army Reserve and in the Texas National Guard. After completing his education, he served in the United States Air Force and was stationed overseas. He and Roxanne then settled in Woodville, Texas, and for the past 35 years, he has owned and operated a dental practice there. Babin has served his community as mayor, a city councilman, a school board member. He served as director of the Tyler County Chamber of Commerce and president of the Lions Club. In 1999, Babin was appointed by then Governor Bush to serve on the Lower Neches Valley Authority and reappointed by Governor Perry. As a member of Congress, Brian serves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the House Science, Space, and Technology Committees. These assignments provided him with a critical platform to serve the economic needs of the 32nd Congressional District, which is home to NASA's Johnson Space Center, 4 deepwater ports, and numerous oil and gas refineries. Babin also has been appointed the ranking member of the House Space Subcommittee, which has a legislative jurisdiction and congressional oversight authority over all matters relating to U.S. national space policies, including NASA and space commercialization. Babin and Roxanne have 5 children and 17 grandchildren, making America safe, strong, and economically secure for the future of his children and his grandchildren remains the reason for running to maintain his seat in Congress and proudly serves the people of Texas' 36th District. We'll have Congressman Brian Babin.
Thank you very much, Ada. I really appreciate you and the great job you're doing at Greater Orange Chamber of Commerce in that area. I'm very proud to be representing you folks too. I also want to say thank you to the Golden Triangle virtual meeting that we're having, the folks that have put this thing together. I've been very excited about coming to speak to you all, and just want to say congratulations on a great show today. It's going to be very informative. I'm gathering that right now. And I also want to say congratulations to a young man that I've known for many years. Our new Speaker of the House of Representatives in Texas, Dade Phelan, graduated from high school and played football with my oldest son, Leif, and really proud of Dade and his accomplishments and the leadership that he's bringing not only to Southeast Texas, but also to our great state. So great to be with you. I'm Congressman Brian Babin, and I represent the 36th District in Congress, and that includes the counties that I had just mentioned. And I work every day for the betterment of the Golden Triangle with my good friend and your Congressman, Randy Weber, for Jefferson County. Our U.S. Senators Cruz and Cornyn, and of course, Speaker Phelan, Senators Creighton and Nichols, and Representatives Decitel and White. And as you can imagine, most of my work in Washington, D.C. lately has been regarding the pandemic. The most recent COVID-19 relief bill, which was signed into law by President Trump on December the 21st, provided much needed money to the Paycheck Protection Program, better known as the PPP program. And while the PPP program was originally meant for businesses with less than 20 employees, beginning tomorrow, March the 10th, charities, independent contractors, local chambers of commerce, and other 501c6 organizations will now be eligible to apply for these loans. And as of this month, the Small Business Administration has loaned out almost $679 billion to more than 7 million U.S. businesses. And this program, developed and pioneered by the Trump administration, frankly, is one of the greatest efforts ever made to help small businesses and the everyday American. Unfortunately, the new Democrat COVID-19 relief package, which is being crammed, and I hate to use that word, but being crammed through Congress right now, costs almost $2 trillion, has had zero Republican input, zero compromise, and even worse, only 9% of this bill is actually for COVID relief. And the rest is a long list. The rest of the bill is just a long list of liberal spending priorities under a false flag of pandemic relief. Democrats tried to include $1.5 million for the Seaway International Bridge, a priority for Senator Chuck Schumer, and also a subway to Silicon Valley, and a $400 million funding package to San Francisco, all in Nancy Pelosi's district in California. But thankfully, the Senate parliamentarian ruled that all of these items were out of order. But you should know that while Democrats are about to add $1.9 trillion more to our national debt, we still have almost $1 trillion sitting in the U.S. Treasury and not being used from the last stimulus bill. To me, this makes no sense whatsoever. We should distribute the current funds before we saddle our children and grandchildren with even more debt. Let me tell you, this bill could set off inflationary pressures that we haven't seen in our lifetime. It could undermine our financial stability and, quite frankly, potentially tank our own economy. Folks, the best stimulus package that we could have is to fully reopen our economy. I'm grateful that Texas is leading the way in this nation, and I hope that the rest of the country will follow suit soon. Texas has also done an outstanding job, I think, in distributing the COVID-19 vaccines. We have administered more than 6 million doses of the vaccine to our state's most vulnerable men, women, and children. Unfortunately, Texas is experiencing a setback along our southern border because President Biden's lax immigration and border security policies and rolling back much of the policies that the Trump administration spent 4 years creating. This has caused a huge surge of illegal border crossings, which are now overwhelming our border agents and our local hospitals. We're even seeing reports of COVID-19 positive illegal immigrants being released into Texas, into our country to fan out throughout the United States. Nearly 200 so far in the last couple of days. This certainly is indeed a true crisis. My plea to this administration is do not undermine all the suffering Americans went through from being locked down for nearly a year or undo our recovery process. And as the co-chairman of the House Border Security Caucus, this greatly disturbs me. Texas should not have to handle a mass influx of immigrants spreading COVID-19, nor another shutdown because of it. The reality is the Biden administration wants to open America's borders and close America's schools. I know a lot of you must be very concerned about education right now. And I'd be very remiss if I didn't talk about the importance of in-person learning and how critical it is to our students' success. Current estimates show that children returning to school in 2021 lost 30% of their reading ability. In rural school districts. One big reason for that is the lack of rural broadband and connectivity, which is another problem that I'm very concerned with. We have to get students back into the classroom, plain and simple. The science is very clear. All schools can, should, and must reopen to in-person learning immediately. With so much effort being put on pandemic recovery, some have forgotten that we're still yet recovering and rebuilding from Hurricane Harvey. Yes, believe it or not, Hurricane Harvey recovery. I focused extensively on our school systems in Southeast Texas, many of which were devastated by the flooding. I'm pleased to report that there are exciting projects coming down the pipeline to improve protections against future storms. These enhancements will ensure the safety of our students and our teachers while providing them with state-of-the-art facilities. I recently worked to help Vidor Independent School District, Oak Forest Elementary School, fight against FEMA's surprising and shocking attempt to claw back millions of previously guaranteed recovery funds. And I will continue helping our school districts and frankly, all of you to navigate this FEMA process. Also important is our critical transportation and infrastructure projects. As the senior-most Republican Texan on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, I partnered with the Trump administration and many of you here today to get the Sabine-Neches Waterway included in the Army Corps' 2021 work plan. This plan includes $68.5 million for dredging the Sabine Pass Jetty Channel and the Sabine Bank Channel. We absolutely must invest in the Port of Beaumont and the Sabine-Neches Waterway. They both serve a vital role in Texas's economic development and, quite frankly, that of the entire country. The Port of Beaumont is the busiest port in the nation for military hardware, and our national security simply depends upon that. I'm also happy to have helped facilitate getting the funding and the New START designation for widening and deepening of our sister port, Port of Houston and the Houston Ship Channel, at the other end of my district on the west side, which should absolutely enhance the economy of Southeast Texas. I'm also very proud to be working on the Orange County Coastal Storm Risk Management Project, spanning from Sabine Pass to Galveston Bay. This will help protect against the floods that are becoming all too familiar, as you all know. Thankfully, we succeeded in getting language signed into law last year to move this project forward in a dramatic fashion. I will continue working alongside leaders in coordinating the details of this project with the Army Corps of Engineers. This region's growth and success mean better wages, more opportunities, and a better quality of life for all of us who live here in Southeast Texas. And I want to commend you all for the work that you do to make the Golden Triangle a great place to live and work. May God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Congressman Babin. Next, we will hear from Congressman Randy Weber. Congressman Weber is a public servant, proven conservative, former small business owner, and third-generation Texas representing the 14th District of Texas. He holds a key leadership role on the House Committee of Science, Space and Technology, serving as the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Energy. Congressman Weber is also a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where he serves on 3 subcommittees: Water Resources and Environment, Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation, and Railways, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials. His first 2 terms in Congress, the congressman served on the Foreign Affairs Committee. For 67 years, Congressman Weber has called the Gulf Coast home. He and his wife, Brenda, have been married for 44 years. The Webers have 3 children and 8 wonderful grandchildren. Congressman Weber.
Well, thank y'all. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to assume, thank you. I'm going to assume you can. You're right. And you did mention that my beautiful bride of 44 years actually grew up in Nederland. And so we have a very special bond to the Golden Triangle. You mentioned all of our committees that we're on. And of course, they're a great set of committees, obviously for energy, for the Gulf Coast of Texas, Southeast Texas. Having grown up on the Gulf Coast of Texas, I know how important energy is. And I will tell you what, Dr. Babin, of course, mentioned the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. I thought he said he was the senior Republican on that committee. I guess he is older than me, but I have been there probably longer than he has, or maybe he's there 2 years before I am. But Dr. Babin has been doing great. We've been working together on TNI to actually dredge out the Sabine-Neches Waterway. we have done everything we can to ensure that the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is used. Oh, I don't know. How about for harbor maintenance? There's a novel thought. And lest I forget, I do want to say I did serve 4 years in the Texas legislature. Great. When our folks come in from the district to Austin, I wish we could be there in person. You know, I served with Alan Ritter, with Joe Decitel, and was just had a great time those 4 years, and then came to Congress. But we're working for the Gulf Coast. We're working on ports maintenance, if you will, on dredging. As most of you probably know, I have 5 ports. We have 5 ports in District 14, more than any other member of Congress. We got Beaumont, you know, we got Port Arthur. I guess you could say Sabine Port. You've got Galveston, Port of Galveston. You've got Texas City, and then of course you've got Freeport. So a lot of more ports than anybody else in Congress. So ports for us are extremely important. Virtually all of those ports are going to have interactions with the Army Corps of Engineers, whether or not they have, even if they don't have specific requests in WRDA, for example. And Brian and I are very fortunate, given our work on the Water Resources Subcommittee, to have a very active working relationship with the Corps of Engineers. And we do everything we can to make sure that our priorities, these ports, Southeast Texas, those priorities are not neglected. You probably know, a lot of you do, that in last year's WRDA, at least in the House passed version, we were successful in getting the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund more fully utilized. As you know, all of our users pay into the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, which exists for the sole purpose of, as I said, harbor maintenance. Unfortunately, for too many years, the HMTF has had surpluses that, in my opinion, were robbed to spend in other places, not going to harbor maintenance. And so they were used to help make up deficits or mask deficits, in my opinion, in some of the other parts of our budget. Correcting this error has long since been a priority of the T&I committee, long before I got there. And that goes also for not just Republican administrations or majorities, but Democrat majorities as well. And we're all hoping to get this reform finally across the finish line this time. But in addition to the Corps, Brian and I, from our positions on the T&I committee, get to work directly with the U.S. Department of Transportation. That's important because to your question about other forms of funding transportation infrastructure at our ports and waterways, we are actively pursuing grant funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation, such as the BUILD, B-U-I-L-D grants, which now stands for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. The program formerly known as, y'all would recognize them, the ports would, as the Tiger grants. So the bottom line is this: we're not leaving any stone unturned in our efforts to fund infrastructure at our ports and waterways because it's so crucial to Southeast Texas. Also essential to the Golden Triangle, as many of us know, for Pete's sakes, Brenda's granddad was a pipe fitter at one of the plants for 34 years, DuPont. But also essential to the Golden Triangle is energy and refining. I can't tell you how important that is. Unfortunately, President Biden and his administration does not share those views on the importance of continuing a free flow of inputs such as gas and crude oil to the refining complexes of the Golden Triangle, which is is it a lifeline for our area. The steps that President Biden took, like the cancellation of the XL Keystone Pipeline, is going to limit the amount of crude oil that can reach the Golden Triangle, especially that type of crude oil we would recognize as heavy crude, that many of our Gulf refineries are designed to handle and where we have a competitive advantage. Revocation of the presidential permit of the Keystone XL pipeline, stating that the project, quote, does not serve the national interests of developing a clean energy economy, end quote, and undermines the U.S. climate leadership. You can't make this stuff up. So sad to see the president come in and do that. The suspension of offshore oil leases is also a blow to our area. with many of the offshore service industries and workers who operate in our district, good paying jobs, and pardon me, and preventing exploration of nearby sources of sour and heavy crudes for our local refiners. It's sad that the president would do something like that. President Biden has issued a 1-year moratorium on oil and gas leasing on federal land and in federal waters, and his executive order directs the Attorney General to take appropriate steps in the litigation to ensure the lands are again withdrawn from the oil and gas leasing program. You can't make this stuff up. This one suspension prohibits the Department of the Interior of issuing approvals for onshore and offshore oil and gas development, including leases or permits to drill, and has a direct, and dare I say, a directly negative impact on our region. So we're watching what the president's doing, what this current administration is doing with energy, because for us, it's huge. The Gulf states, our area, Southeast Texas, Golden Triangle, all the way down to Galveston, all the way over to Freeport, Missouri County, Galveston County, Missouri County, stand to lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. Not just, and think of the support jobs up in the Houston area, up in the entire Gulf Coast region, hundreds of thousands of jobs in the offshore drilling industry. This ban on drilling on federal lands and waters could cost, by most estimates, the industry 1 million jobs by 2022, of which 120,000 of those jobs are right here in Texas. So that's according to research from the API, American Petroleum Institute. Rystad's head of shale research is predicting that if the lease ban gets expanded to a permanent drilling ban, we will see a natural decline in the Gulf of Mexico as soon as operators work through the existing inventory. We are, of course, talking about billions of dollars in lost revenues for service companies in the Gulf of Mexico in the long term. All of this in the name of climate change. But what they forget to mention is that we're at the forefront of carbon capture and emissions lowering technologies. Most of you will probably know about Air Products plant in Port Arthur, carbon capture, sequestration, storage. We've got the biggest facility in the country, and I was there for the grand opening. It's partnered with Valero Refinery to capture CO2 on an industrial scale. It can be done. We're doing it. We're proving it can be done. These projects show how the major industrial players in our district will lead the way on transformational technologies in a lower emissions future toward a more carbon-free environment. The Department of Energy was making smart, targeted investments in early-stage research to advance the next generation of production and emissions control technologies through the Department of Energy Fossil Energy Research and Development, or called the FERD, FER&D program. FER&D conducts research that supports clean, affordable, and efficient use of domestic fossil energy resources. The complex fossil energy research challenges we face today will require an all-on-hands-deck approach. And this industry is a key player here and making great strides. With support from the Department of Energy, the technology that we have in our own district, developing and deployed at facilities like Air Products and Petronova a little further to the west, are reducing the emissions from local refineries and producing affordable, clean American fuel to power our economy. So let me just say that in my district, in our great district, Air Products over in Port Arthur, a lot of people don't know this, they capture over 90% of the CO2 from the product streams of just two commercial stream methane reformers, and injects that CO2 into the West Hastings oil field for enhanced oil recovery. In return, DOE has estimated that an additional 1.6 to 3.1 million barrels of oil will be produced annually from this CO2 application process. Petronova captures CO2 from a coal-fired plant. That's the one in the west part of the district. Like Air Products, routes that CO2 to the West Ranch oil field in our district for enhanced oil recovery. Within the first 10 months of opening, this field saw oil production boost by 1,300%. And I could go on more and more, a whole lot of technical stuff about how critical our district is, producing so much energy for Texas and the nation. But let me just close by saying this. Congress and the Biden administration should be focused on, number one, responsible spending. Number two, how about a realistic approach to climate change rather than the $208 billion proposed in the Democrats' House Resolution, HR 4447, and the Energy Act of 2020 has a total price tag. The Energy Act of 2020 has a total price tag of $35 billion. This is a significant investment in clean energy, technology, efficiency. And I will say that the deployment of this type of technology, while it will preserve over $170 billion to the American taxpayer, why don't we deploy it? Why don't we? Instead of picking winners and losers and focusing on just a few mature technologies, we need to recognize the importance of a diverse portfolio of energy sources, which would keep American energy competitive and would require us to pursue research in every promising clean energy technology. I mean, we've got it. We could support clean energy technology with battery technology. Need to store energy for long-term wind technology. Texas is #1 wind energy state. Congress should fund research and develop into more efficient and cleaner use of fossil fuels, as well as nuclear, water, solar, wind, geothermal power. This comprehensive approach keeps prices for America's consumers and businesses low, period. I could go on about how that would affect the winter we just went through. Our great Gulf Coast of Texas, Southeast Texas, the Golden Triangle has played an integral part in energy for Texas and for the country. And I could go on and on to how important, how proud I am of the area and how privileged we are to serve it. But I guess I'll stop there. Y'all, what's the old Texas saying? It ain't bragging if it's fact. So we just love this district and thank you for the opportunity of serving.
Thank you, Congressman Weber. We want to thank both of the congressmen for taking time out of their busy day to be with us today here at Golden Triangles. Next, we have up Exxonmobil.
Good morning. My name is Nikisha Burns, and I am the Public and Government Affairs Manager for Exxonmobil Beaumont. I want to express what an honor it is to sponsor the 2021 Golden Triangle Days in Southeast Texas. Beaumont has always been well positioned for growth, and ExxonMobil is proud to be a part of this community's history and ongoing growth story. In recent years, we have completed a series of upgrades and additions to our Beaumont area facilities, and our ongoing refinery expansion project will position us as an industry leader in the United States for many years to come. The new crude unit will increase our refining capacity by nearly 65%. We recently completed an expansion at our polyethylene plant that increased production capacity by 650,000 tons per year. This high-performance polyethylene is used in food packaging and medical applications. Now that I've provided you a bit of an update on ExxonMobil, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our Senator, Brandon Creighton. He has taken the lead on key issues that matter to Texas job creators, including franchise and property tax relief, water and transportation infrastructure, and border security. Before his election to the Texas Senate, Creighton served as state representative for District 16, where his peers elected him as chairman of the Texas House Republican Caucus. He also served as chairman of House Federalism Committees tasked with overseeing the state's relationship with the federal government and ensuring that Texas constitutional rights were protected. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Senator Brandon Creighton.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. It's great to be with you. And I know for most Golden Triangle days, you're able to be here in Austin with us at the Capitol, and it's different this time around. But from a virtual standpoint, it's great to be with you and visiting with you and giving you some updates on how we're doing in the session. And I know I'll see you soon. So first, not only is it a very difficult transition for the session itself, because we're used to so many Texans coming in and out of the Capitol each day. We usually have up to 10,000 people a day in the Capitol, and the very next day a different 10,000. So I want to encourage you through any medium that you can to continue to give us your opinions and your advice, because we have bills to consider and we have big decisions to make, and your advice through the process is what makes us better as legislators. I also want to congratulate our own Dade Phelan for being the new Texas House Speaker. That is an incredible accomplishment, and we're all so very proud of Dade. I was able to, of course, serve with Dade in the House before I came over to the Senate in 2015. And that working relationship with our delegation in Southeast Texas is so strong. Certainly all of Texas represented here in the Capitol realizes that, and we're stronger and better for it as we work through some really tough issues. So we'll be rooting for Speaker Phelan, and we'll be working hard to make sure Southeast Texas has great outcomes and results through this legislative session. It's been a very busy start to the session, and we always feel like that we know as legislators coming in exactly how we will direct the priorities of the session, and we lay out those priorities the best we can by listening during the interim in the year and a half that we're not in session. And then when we come in, we start tackling the issues of the day, and inevitably it always turns out that we have issues take hold that we weren't planning on. And so obviously I'm referring to the polar vortex and the winter storm and our electricity grid and how it was managed and operated, certainly the financial side of it, now that we're through the storm and we see the impact on different companies. And so in our Senate Business and Commerce Committee, we spent over 30 hours last week in a hearing reviewing the emergency operations plans from market participants and the impact of the winter storm on our thermal plants and our generators and our retailers. And we put the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT, which is the grid operator, under intense scrutiny to, investigate and vet on your behalf exactly how decisions were made with our power grid and supply and demand, and just not being ready for a storm of that kind of impact. As Texans, we're used to taking punches, right? I mean, we weren't exactly expecting the largest storm in American history called Harvey, Imelda following. We have had a worldwide pandemic, and then a 151-year record on a polar vortex winter event that for Texas exceeded the winter conditions in Minnesota and even in Alaska. So we've got our work cut out for us. We're making some significant changes. And I mentioned ERCOT and the PUC again, because many of those board members with ERCOT have resigned the PUC chair has resigned and one other member. And we're making some winterization requirements and some changes on exactly how our plants and retailers and generators manage their business for the possibility that we have another very intense winter event like we just felt. In the last 2 weeks, the budget committee and I recently gained a seat on Senate Finance. We've been scrutinizing every single state agency and working with those agency heads in presentations before Senate Finance where they prove up their operations and their value and their efficiencies. And they, work towards the current budget cycle and their requests. And we vet those requests and say yes and no, item by item. It's been very interesting to have a seat at the table. I haven't served on as a budget writer since 2011 when I was in the House, and we had just passed through the subprime crash and what we call now the Great Recession. And we were in a position where we had to find $16 billion to balance the state budget. So this time around, we're not in as dire circumstances. We were expecting to be about $5 billion short, and it's turned out to be more like between 1 and 2. That's good news. But with the winter storm conditions and the impact on the power grid and the dollars that we're looking at there, the state could be up against some decision making on whether or not we put money into some of that recovery or we let the market work its way through and the market participants stand on their own 2 feet and live with the consequences of the positions that they had previously taken to be ready for that storm. So the budget itself is over $250 billion. Our intent is to balance that budget where we see at the federal level and with other states, that's not as much of a priority. But in Texas, we keep a savings account that's healthy for a crisis, whether it be Harvey, whether it be this winter storm that we just experienced. We balance our budget. We have worked hard to get rid of deferrals and to get back to zero-based accounting and budgeting principles. And we want to show the rest of the country that even though there are many, many zeros involved with the billions of dollars in a $250 to $260 billion budget, as Texans, we can show that we're fiscally responsible to our citizens and that we can balance that budget to be consistent with lining up expenditures and revenues. Novel concept, right? So if it's good enough for what you have to do at the kitchen table at home, it should be good enough for state government. We have a great deal of work ahead, and through our office, we're working on bills that affect our port entities along the Sabine Neches that affect our election integrity and the outcome of our elections and being able to trust the process. We've got several pieces of good legislation there. We have some border-related priorities that we passed in the Senate last session for Senate District 4 as the lead, but we were not able to get those priorities accomplished in the House. We have a monument protection bill that gives a process for removing our Texas history. As we saw during this last year across the country, George Washington defaced, Abraham Lincoln pulled down. We even saw Stevie Ray Vaughan defaced in Austin as a monument where Antifa believed that he was a pilgrim. So we just have a major failure to communicate on the history of our state, good and bad. And we want to make sure there's rhyme and reason to the process for removing our history before there's a discussion and before the people have a say. And so that was another bill we passed in the Senate last time around. We have some of the National Federation of Independent Businesses top legislative priority. We have a bill that will preempt or keep cities from imposing unreasonable mandates on businesses in their area as sort of a patchwork, plan across the state of different regulations and requirements instead of one uniform approach that should be handled here at the state level. So we have a bill to make sure cities are not inconsistent in what they ask of businesses as we work hard to be the job creation engine of North America, to keep our small businesses' doors open, and to make sure that Texas remains the best place in the country to start a business in your garage or in your kitchen, where long ago the state of Washington itself, the state of California, the state of Illinois, many states have just long ago lost their priorities to be supportive of small business startups, and those businesses have been voting with their feet, and those mom and pops that own those businesses have been moving out of those states in record numbers. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and hundreds and hundreds of bills to consider for the session. So again, we need your priorities expressed as we work through the channels in the process. There's 100 different stops for a bill to move through the process before it gets to the governor's desk for his signature. And so we need your voice and support and feedback on each of those. We have a lot of changes going on from COVID recovery as we're moving through the vaccinations of 1A and 1B for 65 and up, and for our frontline healthcare professionals, and as I've been advocating for our teachers, to make sure that those vaccinations continue to be deployed in record numbers. And right now, we're seeing the largest vaccination rollout in the history of the world, not of Texas, not of the country, but in the entire world. The number of vaccinations that we're deploying is just has never been seen before. So we're winning this battle against COVID, and we're making sure that kids can stay in school, to be learning live and in person, and that our health risk vulnerable citizens are safe, but that businesses can keep their doors open to get back to 100% working priority, and to make sure that our Texas economy is protected. Because if our economy is protected, our businesses are protected, and our jobs are growing in number, then we will see less mental health difficulties. We'll see less child abuse, less divorce, less tragic situations related to suicide and alcoholism and drug use, and all of those things that are collateral issues that are a result of a down economy. We'll see a turnaround and a continued advance, as Texas would always expect, to lead the country in this recovery effort. And I'm determined to be on the front lines to make sure that happens. So I want to mention that I still serve on the committee with jurisdiction over water issues for the state. As I mentioned, I serve on budget, Senate Finance, and Business and Commerce that is reviewing our electricity grid and a lot of planning going forward. And I serve on as chairman of the Higher Education Committee in the Senate, and all workforce recovery policies tied together with our universities and planning forward, not just for 5 and 10-year goals, but for immediate changes, generational changes in the lives of Texans as they work to improve within their current jobs. They work to recover from being laid off and to gain employment once again. And the credentialing that we're doing, the degree plans that we're working on, the technical training and skills, upskilling and reskilling and workforce development, all of it aren't 5 and 10-year goals and changes to the lives of Texans. They're going to be 6-month immediate impact changes to the lives of Texans. So I'm excited to be with you on it and to represent you. I chair the Port Committee as well, and those are very important assets to our economy statewide and certainly to SD4. And just continue to have your opinions and feedback coming in. And it's a privilege to be with you and to represent you today. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Senator Creighton. We want to again thank all of our state and federal elected officials for taking time to meet with us today. In addition to informing you about our agenda and hearing from our elected officials, we felt it was important to continue with the traditions of the Tuesday session presentations. So you will be hearing from senior and state level people who will get into a little more in depth on their particular area of expertise and how they think this session might impact us in Southeast Texas. Up first, we will hear from Ms. Adriana Cruz, Executive Director, Economic Development and Tourism for the state of Texas. This session is sponsored by the Sabine-Neches Navigation District.
Hello, I'm Adriana Cruz. I'm the Executive Director for the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office in the Office of Governor Greg Abbott. Thank you for inviting me to be here as part of Golden Triangle Day in Austin for your virtual visit to the Capitol to meet and talk about issues that are important to your area. I'm proud to be here to speak with you about economic development in the state of Texas. Governor Abbott appointed me as Executive Director to the Economic Development and Tourism Office in October 2019, and I started my position in December, and it's an honor and a privilege to lead the state's economic development efforts. 4 months after I started in my position, the pandemic started, and what a year it has been, as it has been for you, for your communities, and for your businesses. The mission of the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office is to market and promote Texas across the country and across the world as a premier business location and travel destination. Our team works with local community partners to enhance and grow our state's economy by attracting jobs and new capital investment to the state. We facilitate the location, expansion, and retention of domestic and international businesses, oversee tourism promotion, administer the state's financial incentive programs, work with the state's music and film industries, assist small businesses in entrepreneurial development, and further the state's workforce strategic plan. Under the leadership of Governor Abbott, we work to maintain Texas's status as the top state in the nation for business, economic vitality, and job creation. Economic development is a team sport, and our office relationship with local and regional economic development organizations across the state are vital to our state's success and to bring economic prosperity to all Texans. Our office is committed to upholding Texas's status, leading the nation for economic optimism and confidence as we go into 2021. There are 6 divisions in our office: Business and Community Development, Economic Development Finance, Travel Texas, the Texas Music Office, the Texas Film Commission, and the Texas Workforce Investment Council. Business and Community Development focuses on the creation of new jobs and capital investment through domestic and international business recruitment, expansion, and retention, increasing Texas exports, and small business development and entrepreneurship. This team promotes Texas as a premier business investment destination and assists companies as they're making decisions to locate into the state. Our project managers coordinate the site selection process and connect businesses with resources needed to be successful in Texas. We also have a community relations team that represents our office in the 5 regions across Texas. Betty Russo is the representative for the East Texas region who works in your area. Our regional representatives communicate directly with local governments and stakeholders to assist with increasing economic development capacity, organizing workshops, and providing stakeholders with updates on state programs and resources. Another very important division in our office is the Economic Development Finance team. They oversee the state incentive programs, which are competitive, cost-effective financial tools and performance-based incentives that support and facilitate communities and businesses and making sure that communities and businesses have access to capital for economic development purposes. One of the most well-known programs is the Texas Enterprise Fund, one of the largest deal closing funds of its kind in the country that continues to generate significant job creation and capital investment for Texas. The TEF is a performance-based cash grant for projects where a single Texas site is competing with another out-of-state location. Another well-known program is the Texas Enterprise Zone Program, a performance-based incentive program that allows businesses to receive a refund of their state sales and use taxes of up to $7,500 per job created and or retained. If the Texas Enterprise Fund is our deal closing fund, you could say the Texas Enterprise Zone Program is our retention program. One item that has come to the attention of Governor Abbott in light of the pandemic was the need for adequate broadband coverage across the state. Governor Abbott created the Governor's Broadband Development Council in 2019 to study ways in which rural Texas can be best provided with internet service. This council has been meeting for all of 2020, and a report was recently issued to the state legislators. And the duties of the council are to research the progress of broadband development in underserved areas, identify barriers to residential and commercial broadband deployment, study technology-neutral solutions to overcome barriers, and analyze how statewide broadband would benefit our communities in terms of economic development, the delivery of educational opportunities, and healthcare. So our office has been incredibly busy throughout this year. A couple of other updates that I wanted to give you. Of course, Texas receives a lot of recognition and a lot of accolades. And one of the most recent, in fact, just yesterday on March the 1st, it was announced that Texas received the Governor's Cup Award from Site Selection Magazine. This is an award put together by Site Selection Magazine for the state that has the most economic development project activity of any other state in the country. And Texas has won this award for a record-breaking 9 years in a row. So even in a pandemic year, our prospect activity has been incredibly high. We have approximately 264 projects in our pipeline right now. Despite the pandemic, companies are still very interested in looking at Texas and looking across the state. And this is in diverse industries, not just the energy sector and oil and gas, but advanced manufacturing, life sciences, aerospace and aviation, and corporate operations. So we have a lot of diversity in our pipeline. And just, some of the numbers from last year. In 2020, we had about 800 new projects announced statewide, not just the ones that we worked in our office, but the ones that were happening in your community, your local businesses that were making investment and adding new jobs. The total investment in 2020 was about $13 billion of capital investment, and that is about 44,000 new jobs that took place in our state. And we have some wonderful announcements that took place in 2020. Companies like Tesla, like Wesco Aircraft, and of course, at the end of 2020, we had several Fortune 500 headquartered companies announced that they were leaving California and coming to Texas. And that includes Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Oracle, and CBRE. So all in all, we've had an incredibly busy year, a very successful year. Despite the pandemic, the interest in Texas remains very high. And we, of course, are here to help you as you continue your economic development efforts, whether that's in international trade, small business development, entrepreneurship, and business relocation and expansion. So please know that we're here to help you and to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to continuing to work with you in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz, and thanks again to our sponsor, Sabine Natchez Navigation District. Our next session is sponsored by Port Arthur LNG and Arsenault Wilson and Cole. Next, we will hear from James Bass, who serves as Executive Director for the Department of Transportation.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm James Bass, Executive Director of the Texas Department of Transportation. It's an honor to speak with you today about how TxDOT is connecting you with Texas. You, our local and regional partners, play a key role in helping us build a reliable transportation system in Southeast Texas. Before getting into updates on the current legislative session, a quick introduction about the size of the job that TxDOT must do. We have over 12,000 employees, 25 districts around the state, and headquarters in Austin. We have a 5-person policy board appointed by the governor. As I'm sure you know, our Beaumont district is in the very capable hands of our district engineer, Chad Boney, and his staff. The nearly 300 TxDOT employees who work in the district help plan, design, build, operate, and maintain the road system in this 8-county region of the state. For the Beaumont district, that's more than 5,800 lane miles on the state system. Despite a global pandemic and unprecedented winter storm, the women and men of TxDOT continue to help move people and products across and through Texas. That is no small feat. TxDOT operates and maintains more than 80,000 centerline miles of highways, more than any other state. Our state roadways carry more traffic than any other state. In 2019, Texas traveled more than 575 million miles each day. Let me put that into some context. The average distance between the Earth and the Moon is 238,000 miles. That means that Texans take the equivalent of some 3,000 trips to the Moon each and every day. Texas has more than 54,000 bridges, a number that no state even comes close to. And based on federal bridge inventory statistics, our bridges have some of the best overall ratings of any state in the nation. But we are more than just roads. Over the past 5 years, we've administered nearly $800 million in state and federal program funding to support rural and small urban transit agencies. We also administered more than $100 million in federal funding to support locally sponsored safe routes to schools, sidewalks, and bikeways in rural and small urban areas. We work with stakeholders to incorporate and enhance bicycle and pedestrian elements in our road projects. Our Maritime Division is the state's non-federal sponsor for the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway that runs along the Gulf of Mexico coastline. This division coordinates planning with deep and shallow draft ports along the Gulf Coast. And since 2015, we've authorized $150 million in program funding to address landside port activities. And during this era of COVID, TxDOT is still serving Texans. Projects are being planned, built, and maintained just as they will be post-pandemic. Most public meetings and hearings have switched to virtual settings. Environmental public hearings, federal regulations require us to have an in-person option. We created a hybrid approach that also incorporates a virtual option. We haven't let COVID-19 slow us down one bit. We're still hard at work planning for the future. Last August, the Commission adopted our 2021 Unified Transportation Program. Think of it as our 10-year capital improvement program. It's what we use to guide transportation development across our state. It includes $74.6 billion in highway projects. That's funding that we reasonably expect to be available over that 10-year window. It's not a budget and it's not a guarantee. It's a snapshot in time. As TxDOT's funding picture changes, so does the UTP. That's why we update it every year. Projects that have been awarded flow out and new projects flow in. Now that I've laid the groundwork for what we do at TxDOT, let me talk more specifically about what we're doing in Jefferson and Orange counties. We're hard at work reconstructing and widening I-10 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes from Adams Bayou to the Sabine River in Orange County. As part of the widening project, we're also rebuilding the Sabine River Relief Bridge. The frontage road bridges at Adams Bayou will be removed, but the turnarounds will remain. Entrance and exit ramps will also be available immediately upstream and downstream of Adams Bayou, and the main lane bridge will have auxiliary lanes added. We should be able to wrap up the widening project about the middle of 2024, and the reconstruction project should be done late next year. All total, we're investing more than $120 million for these projects. 3 widening projects are ongoing between Winnie and Beaumont for a total of $273 million. This includes widening the stretch of interstate from our 4 to 6 lanes, as well as rebuilding, reconfiguring, or widening the overpasses throughout the limits of the project. All 3 projects are anticipated to be complete in 2024. Another major project is the State Highway 73 US 69 Interchange project, which will reconstruct the interchange from its current cloverleaf configuration to a turbine configuration. The turbine configuration includes ramps that form a spiral around the interchange's center. The 4 cloverleaf loops will be replaced with 5 direct connectors, improving safety, mobility, and connectivity. We're going to open this project up for bids sometime this fall, but it's possible that we can move that up to this summer. Once the $70 million project's been awarded, it should take about 3 years for construction. We're planning to reconfigure the southern I-10 US 69 interchange in Beaumont, or as you know it, the Cardinal Drive interchange. In that project, we're also going to widen I-10 from Hollywood Street to Walden Road. That project could go to bid this fall, and once it's awarded, it should take about 4 years to complete. One final project I want to mention is the I-10 US 69 East Tex Freeway Interchange project. In that project, we'll reconfigure the northern interchange as well as widen I-10 from Hollywood Street to 7th Street. This project is a couple of years away from being ready for bidding, but right now we estimate that it will take 4 years to complete, and it should cost around $300 million. Of course, these are just some of the projects that we have planned for this area, but if you have any questions about these or anything else we're planning for Jefferson or Orange County, Chad and his staff are there to help you. We're proud of the work that Chad and his team are doing there, and we know that you're in good hands. A lot of time in Austin these days revolves around the legislative session. Transportation is always a prominent issue during session, and so far, legislators have already filed bills related to additional registration or renewal fees for alternative fuel vehicles and changes to the gas and diesel tax rates. Of course, our role at TxDOT is to provide information and resources and answer questions from legislators and their staffs. As our state budget writers, they have a hard job juggling the state's many needs, including transportation, within available revenue. This session, we've asked state leaders for $30.6 billion to help us maintain and replace the existing system, develop new projects, and pay for projects that are already underway. As we know, one of the challenges that legislators will have to deal with is the lingering effects of COVID on our citizens and the state's bottom line. As it relates to transportation, we've already seen decreases in our major sources of revenue: taxes and fees for motor fuels, vehicle registrations, oil and gas production, and motor vehicle sales. Because of previous legislative actions, TxDOT can make funding adjustments in some areas that allow us to better react to the unexpected. We've also identified areas for where we can reduce cost to maximize existing funding and then put those funds towards roadways. More good news. Federal COVID legislation provided $10 billion in additional funds to state DOTs, and of that amount, Texas was allocated $967 million. Bottom line, TxDOT is still planning and building projects and maintaining our roads just as we did pre-pandemic, and we expect to do so post-pandemic. Evidenced by the more than $24 billion that we have under contract for construction and maintenance right now. Rest assured, our employees continue to do their part in connecting you with Texas. While the past year has been uncertain, there is one constant for TxDOT: keeping safety as our top priority. With more people working from home and many schools going virtual, we thought we would see a decrease in traffic fatalities during COVID. Unfortunately, Texas and the rest of the nation saw the same trend: an increase in traffic deaths. In 2020, we saw more than 3,900 people die in traffic crashes, an average of 10.7 deaths per day. In 2019, there were more than 3,600 Texans that lost their lives in crashes. To be clear, these are not just numbers. These are mothers, fathers, children, friends whose absence is felt by those who love them. And every year, the traffic deaths keep happening. The last time someone didn't die in a crash in Texas on a single day was November 7th, 2000. That's more than 20 years of daily deaths. TxDOT is committed to ending the streak of daily traffic deaths. Our commission set a goal of 0 deaths by the year 2050. You hopefully are familiar with our social media campaign of End the Streak Texas. Ending traffic fatalities is a shared responsibility. We, as your DOT, design and maintain the roads. We work with law enforcement, and each one of us plays a role as well. It's easy to do. It doesn't require any extra money, no extra time. We just need to be intentional every time we get behind the wheel. Buckle up, everybody, every time, every trip. Don't drink or do drugs while you're driving. The combination can be deadly. Pay attention. Cell phones down, eyes straight ahead. Don't speed. Drive for conditions. If you bike ride, obey traffic laws. If you enjoy the occasional walk or jog, be sure to cross at crosswalks. They really will save your life. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you, and here's to a better and safer 2021 for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Bass, and thank you again to our sponsors, Port Arthur LNG and Arsenault, Wilson, and Cole. Our next session will be covered by Glenn Hager, who serves as the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. Cheniere and the City of Port Arthur are sponsoring this session.
You know, as we look back to last year in February, Texas continued our traditional pace of outpacing the national average in GDP growth as well as job gains. Both the dual headwinds of COVID as well as lower oil and gas prices was unfortunately means that Texas was going to have some type of recession. In my office, not only do we look at the traditional economic indicators of GDP growth, employment, tax receipts into the Treasury, but we also started looking at a lot of types of non-traditional economic indicators, trying to get a glimpse as to what was going to be the impact into the state economy. Thankfully, I can report that what has occurred in the last year, while we had impacts, unfortunately, in job losses, GDP contraction, lost revenues into the state Treasury, that it's not near what we thought it may have been last summer. And in part, the reasons for that is you and I, the consumers, as people transitioned, if they could, to work from home, people were doing repairs in and around their homes, things that they could still do and be engaged in some type of activity. And all of those things, people spending in retail, people continued to purchase. However, a lot more of that was transitioned to online purchasing. And so while sales tax receipts, many may not know that if you look at your state budget, 1/3 is federal dollars, 2/3 is state dollars. Of the state dollar portion, 60% of all tax collections are sales taxes. So roughly they've been about 5% contraction in sales tax receipts instead of double digit, which has helped the picture of the overall state treasury as we entered into this new legislative session. Speaking of a legislative session, I have to congratulate the Beaumont area, the Golden Triangle area of Orange and Port Arthur. Why? Because the first Speaker of the House from your area is now sitting and holding the gavel in the Texas House of Representatives. So congratulations to having Dade Phelan as the new Speaker of the House of Representatives. So as we entered into this legislative session, the budget picture is in better shape than we anticipated. And why is that? Sales tax receipts, as I mentioned, are not as negative as we originally thought last summer, thankfully. As well as last session, I'd asked the legislature to pass a couple pieces of bills of legislation. Why? Because the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision in what's called the Wayfair case. And from a fairness perspective, that if you and I go purchase something in our own community, we're going to pay sales tax. Whereas if we bought something online, we want to make sure that there's a fairness in the system, that our local stores are not at a competitive disadvantage because they're required to collect sales tax, and the online presence needs to be able to collect and remit it as well to make sure that fairness is in the system. So when we worked on those bills provided to the legislature last session, we told them originally we thought it would be roughly $500 million into the state treasury on those online sales tax collections from marketplace providers who provide a platform for people to sell through, as well as what we call remote sellers that sell directly to you and I versus their own website. So instead of $500 million, in fact, in the first 12 months, it was more like $1.3 billion. So there's a lot more marketplace providers and remote sellers than we had originally anticipated out there, as well as because of the pandemic, you and I started purchasing more items online than we have ever before. In fact, in the last 15 months, that has meant $1.7 billion to the state treasury. So that has helped put the treasury in a better position, as well as lastly, the COVID dollars that U.S. government has passed in the various packages. The state has received those dollars, and that also has helped put the state economy and the state budget in a better position. Texas continues to gain in people that want to relocate their headquarters, expand their businesses here in Texas. We think Texas is very poised for that economic opportunity, but we have that extra headwind that most of the nation did not have. So Texas next year will get back on the trajectory. One of the words that I use quite frequently is uncertainty. When you're trying to forecast the 9th largest economy in the entire world, think about that. Texas is the 9th largest economy in the entire world. And as we're trying to forecast, there's always some uncertainty. But now, ever than before, there's more uncertainty today. And while we're confident in the numbers we've provided the legislature, I've also cautioned that there is potential that if all things work out with the vaccine rollout, we hit those targets quicker than thought of, well, then the economy could do much better than we anticipate. But on the flip side, as we continue to work through the vaccine rollout here in Texas, or if there's variants of COVID that has some impact to that rollout, then potentially we could actually have a slowing of the economic growth here in the state. And so therefore, while that variation, I continue to make a point to the legislature and every opportunity that I give to address groups that we're going to continue to monitor all the different facets of the state economy. We're looking at all, and every couple of months of data that we have gives us a little better glimpse into the trajectory of the state economy. I want to say thank you for everything you do here in the state of Texas. Your region is extremely important in making Texas the 9th largest economy in the world, extremely important in so many critical aspects to our state and our national security with the petrochemical industry, manufacturing in your region, exports that come out of your region, and all the capacities that you make for the state of Texas and the nation. And so thank you for what you do. I wish that we were in person today, and hopefully next time we get together, we'll be back in person. And so if you take anything from the discussion that I said today for the state economy, Texas entered into this downturn in a stronger footing than pretty much every state in the nation. We are continuing to grow. We think Texas next year is going to get back to outpacing the national average. And as we look at the state budget, yes, the legislature will have tough choices to make. However, with that being said, we're not in the position that we've been in other budgeting cycles where the revenues were drastically impacted as we entered into the 2011 session or the 03 sessions, which were very difficult sessions. But as we look forward into the future, Texas has a bright opportunities and a bright future. I just hope that we all do our part to make sure that our neighbors feel safe and secure so we can once hopefully get COVID behind us and put Texas right back on the path of where we were a year ago. So may God bless you, God bless Texas, and everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Hager, and much thanks to Chevron and the City of Port Arthur for your sponsorship. Up next, we have Kathleen Jackson, who is from Beaumont. She is a board member for the Texas Water Development Board, and this briefing session is sponsored by Chevron Phillips.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be a part of Golden Triangle Days in Austin. I wish we could all be together personally, but it's a real tribute to the Chamber that you're moving ahead and doing this virtually. The Chamber has meant so much to me personally, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you. We've worked for so many years together, and I feel like that all the time and effort and everything that you kind of invested over the years in teaching and coaching and counseling me in economic development have really enabled me to do the job that I'm doing today on a statewide level. So thank you so much for everything. And I learned so much in working with the chambers. I learned that you are the leadership group within the community, and so many of the things that happen, you're behind it. And that's so important, I think, as we move forward, because Texas has so many challenges ahead of us and so many opportunities for growth. In the world of economic development, and I remember my days at the Chamber, there's no standing still. I mean, we have to continue to invest in our existing business and help it to grow so we can continue to compete. And if you will, draw those jobs to Southeast Texas and to Texas as a whole. Back in the day when I would get the call, we'd all go to the Chamber office, we'd sit around a big table, and whoever the entity was that was thinking about maybe relocating to Southeast Texas, we'd go around the room and we'd talk about what the area had to offer. Now it's totally and completely different. And the people who are maybe interested in coming to Texas or relocating in Southeast Texas, they know more about us than we might even know about ourselves before they even walk through the door. And they really only have 3 questions. They want to know, tell me about your water supply. How do I get my product to market? And tell me about your workforce. So to the extent that we can ensure that communities across Texas have the water infrastructure that they need, we can position Texas for continued growth. I'd like to take a few minutes and just tell you who the Texas Water Development Board is, give you an update on what's going on infrastructure-wise across the state, talk a little bit about our flood program, and then just kind of give you my thoughts and ideas on kind of what the future beholds. The Texas Water Development Board was established after the drought of the 50s, when people across Texas came together and said, we will never, ever, ever let this happen again. We'll never let Texas run out of water. So they formed a state agency. And in my mind, we have basically 3 things that we are called to do, that we are charged to do. First of all, as the engineer on the board, we are the data repository for all water data for Texas. And this is so important because the better the data, the better the science, the better the science, the better the policy. So all of the data is available on our website. You can call the board. I promise you that a living, breathing person will answer the phone and will help you. It's important that that data be available in a raw format so that you can come to your own conclusions and that it can be used for developing new technologies. So we are the data repository for all water data for Texas. We also are charged with water planning. Texas is very unique in that we have a very rigorous regional and state water planning process. We have 16 regional water planning groups across the state. They are made up of representatives from agriculture, industry, big cities, small communities, and they all come together and say, what do we have today? What do we need for the future? And what are those strategies or projects that will get us there? We do it every 5 years. We have just completed 5 cycles of 25 years of water planning in Texas. And the board is now moving forward with approving and putting forth the 2022 state water plan. We don't plan to plan, we plan to build. And so a big part of the role of the Texas Water Development Board is to do what is kind of like our second charge, which is to be a bank. We have money to loan right here at home. You won't get a better interest rate anywhere than the Texas Water Development Board. So we provide very low interest financing through our state revolving fund loan program or through the State Water Implementation Fund of Texas. Many of you may recall that a number of years ago. The legislature moved $2 billion from the rainy day fund into the SWIFT, or the State Water Implementation Fund of Texas, to be able to start implementing or building those projects that were identified in the state water plan. And to date, we have committed $9 billion and have some very significant projects moving forward. I think so important as a leadership group within Southeast Texas to kind of not only know what's going on in our hometown, in our home region, but also what's going on across the state. Lake Bodark is moving forward, the first major reservoir to be built in Texas in 30 years, funded through the SWIFT program. The integrated pipeline in Dallas, moving water from one part of the state to the other to accommodate growth and needs. Seawater desal facility is being planned and funded through SWIFT in Corpus, a consortium with industry to make sure that they have a reliable and dependable and abundant water supply to not only help and support the community, but also to support the growing needs of industry in that area. The city of Marfa, building a water well. Hidalgo Irrigation District, #1 down in the valley, lining irrigation canals for water conservation. So a number of projects going on across the state. We've hit a record here just recently since inception of the board, right at $30 billion, half of that being committed since 2013, and about $1.3 billion of that going to rural entities. So if our measure of success is, are we turning planning into projects, I think that is a resounding yes. So we are the data repository for all water data for Texas. We are a bank. And lastly, we can be a technical resource. Our folks can't engineer the project for you, but they've seen a lot. They can make recommendations. They can put you in touch with people who've had similar challenges or are seizing a similar type of opportunities. So we exist to be a resource. We are not regulatory. We work with people across the state, again, to make sure that they have the water supply that they need today and for the future, so that our children and our children's children can continue to have the quality of life that we enjoy. One of the things that we were charged with during the last legislative session, and something that I personally was very, very honored that they reached out to the Water Development Board, and it was a tremendous effort led by the Southeast Texas Consortium, Senator Creighton, Representative and now Speaker Dave Phelan, with help from the whole legislative committee. They traveled across the state and along with Senator Perry, put forth and gave the resources to the board to establish the first ever state flood planning process with a charge to develop the state flood plan. And then also through the Flood Infrastructure Fund provided some initial funding to be able to move forward and to start funding some of the mitigation, the flood mitigation that we know is so important. A tremendous effort and I think great leadership in charging the water development and being able to move forward in that process. The state flood planning process is very similar to our water planning process. There are 15 regional flood planning groups across the state. They are charged with working together collaboratively. They are basin-wide. And the concept here is that folks need to come together, entities need to come together, because what you do upstream impacts those downstream and vice versa. Just like our water planning process, we know that success resides with it being data and science driven. And so for me, what is so exciting, I think, about the flood planning process is the amount of investment that is going to go into getting better mapping. We reached out across the state, we talked to stakeholders and kind of asked that question, you know, what are the needs? And many of us came back and said that, you know, the maps were either extremely old or in some areas not even existent. So we knew that that had to be the first step. And so we've invested and we have put together the staff that can move forward and do something called base level engineering, which is the foundation on which all mapping activities are are based. And to just kind of explain what BLE is, it starts out with needing to kind of figure out what the shape of the bowl is. And so that is something called LIDAR, which is very sophisticated elevation data. And for the engineers, we have flown all of Texas. We have LIDAR for all of the state now, and that's something we will continue as time moves forward and continue to update. The second thing you need to know is, how much water is going into the bowl, the hydrology, and then how the water kind of goes to move in the bowl after it gets there, or the hydraulics. So we take all those things, put them together, and create, if you will, models and tools that in turn local communities can use and be able to make that determination themselves. Again, it's a bottom-up driven process of what level of risk do we want to mitigate to. So very, very proud of the fact that we have created the rules for both the financing piece of it, the fifth, as well as for the planning part of it. All the 15 regional planning groups have met. They've selected a chair, they've selected a political subdivision in their process of moving forward with what's going to be a very regimented and very science-driven process, with the end goal being that we have a state flood plan, the first ever state flood plan. And then the intent on down the road, just like it is with water planning, is that we would tie planning to financing. And so eventually would need to be in the state flood plan to receive funding from the state to move forward with flood mitigation projects. But I think the legislature was very intuitive in knowing that they needed to also provide some funding initially to kickstart the process. And so through the Flood Infrastructure Fund, we are moving forward and working with communities. They've submitted applications. We were very much oversubscribed, but we're working through the list that have been prioritized. And we're basically providing funding for planning, because we know that that is an important first step, that it needs to be basin-wide, it needs to be collaborative. We're then also looking at projects that communities have developed. One of the requirements is that they have to kind of back up and do, if you will, a restart to make sure that they're using the most recent and the best available science and information, and that they're working together collaboratively. Third, we heard from people around the state that there are oftentimes projects where federal funding is available, but there is a limited amount of local funding that's available to make the match. And so we created a category 3 to be able to provide grant and loan financing, 0% loan financing to those communities who need to make the local match for a federal project. And then lastly, recognizing that to protect human life and property, important to have early warning systems and those kind of things that can be put in very quickly. So a whole suite of projects that have come before the board, that the board is working through to provide the commitments, and then working with local communities in order to, again, change and move that planning into projects. So kind of looking at things as a whole in terms of where we are, where we feel like we need to be, and what are those resources that need to be in play so that we can accomplish our objectives. I mean, first off, I'm very grateful, and I feel very fortunate that we have the staff at the Water Development Board, the very talented, professional, creative, innovative, and passionate people that, work every day. Business has continued, the core business has continued throughout the pandemic, and then they've taken on these additional responsibilities, which will forever change the Water Development Board and forever change Texas in such a positive way. Secondly, very appreciative of the legislature, of the leadership there, of giving the resources to the board to be able to move forward and continue to do water supply projects, fund those, be able to do water supply planning, provide for upgrade for wastewater treatment facilities, because as we know, theoretically, there's not one more molecule of water in the world today than when God created the earth. And so it's incumbent on all of us to be good stewards and treat that water so it can go back and be used again and again. And just kind of looking at the resources that we have across the state for the being able to, if you will, kind of take all of these planning activities and the financing and be able to kind of put it into action. So you can have the money and you can have the technology, but it's up to that local leadership to take the bull by the horns and move the projects forward. And we're very, I think, blessed in Texas in that we have great leaders across our state, people who understand the need to invest in water infrastructure. They see the value in promoting ongoing operational integrity. They're taking advantage of low interest rates. They're building it with today's dollars, and they're capturing those benefits, not just in low interest financing, sometimes in working with the board, but also garnering those benefits of doing it on your own terms. So it's not the middle of the night when something breaks and then you have an emergency situation and the costs are just astronomical. So being proactive rather than reactive. So lots of great things going on across Texas, lots of positive things within, if you will, the water world. And again, the Texas Water Development Board is not regulatory. We exist to serve. I'd like to bring you greetings from other two board members, Peter Lake, who is our chairman. He's from Tyler, Texas. And our other board member, Brooke Popp, who serves in the business and the legal roles. She came from Glenn Hager's office and has so much energy. And I think we form, as an agency, a great team to be a resource for communities and to help groups like the Chamber to realize the vision that you have for your community, to be able to move forward, to build out your infrastructure, to prepare for future growth and prosperity. What we do know is that, Texas continues to grow. We're in perpetual drought punctuated by times of flood, but people are moving to Texas every day. And depending on who you talk to, it's anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 people, and nobody's bringing any water with them. So important that we continue to move forward, to draw upon the leadership in the local communities. And I can't thank the Chambers enough for everything that you are doing to make sure that Southeast Texas is the kind of community that families want to live in, they want to raise their children in, and that you want it to be successful for years to come. Thanks so much for having me, and if there's anything and everything that I can do, please reach out to me. It's wonderful to see everybody. Y'all take care.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson, and thanks again to Chevron Phillips for their continued support. Now we will hear from Dr. Diana Fite, who is the president of the Texas Medical Association, who will tackle our health care. This session is sponsored by Motiva.
Hi, I'm Dr. Diana Fite, president of the Texas Medical Association, the organization that represents 55,000 physicians in Texas. I'm also an emergency physician in the Houston area. Thank you for inviting us to your chamber meeting and to discuss some of our legislative priorities and see how they might work with your legislative priorities in the realm of the health field. We have about 9 major priorities, and we picked 3 out that we thought would mesh well with your health priorities, because clearly we don't have time to go through our 9. Of course, we're also watching the bills and assume that we'll be working with other issues too that arise that affect healthcare and our patients and physicians. So one of our top priorities is funding for the uninsured. Now, the uninsured problem, as you well know, Texas is number 1 or last in the nation, however you want to look at it, for the number of uninsured. We estimate that before the pandemic, we had 18.6% of Texans who were uninsured, which equals about 5 million patients. And then we estimate that about 1.6 million people in Texas have lost their jobs and lost their insurance. So once the pandemic is over, that number is going to definitely be much higher. So we think this is the time, if ever there was one, that maybe we can get the legislature, and particularly Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, to decide to finally let us take down some of the federal dollars, which are our taxpayer money, and help out with the Texas budget and get some more people insured. If they don't want to take Medicaid expansion, which they don't seem to want to, even though we calculate that it would save Texas about $110 million per biennium, or $55 million per year to do so, there are alternative ways that we're looking into that we could propose to take down some of that taxpayer money from the federal government and help out in Texas. So that seems to go along with your first and second priorities of getting funding for the uninsured, and we definitely think this is a time when that might be doable. A second priority that we have is budgeting for behavioral health care, and that seems to be a priority for y'all in your third, fourth, and fifth healthcare priorities. There's no question that we are so underfunded in mental health issues that it's a very sad state of affairs. And especially with the pandemic, we're seeing more and more mental health issues. So as it is already, people will wait not hours, but days in the emergency department trying to get a bed to open up. We're seeing people not just with depression, but with schizophrenia or problems so serious that they are of significant danger to themselves or to others, and just having to sit in the emergency department with a stretcher, and the emergency physicians checking in and out on them, and the nurses trying to just bide time until something opens up for a bed. We are so low on beds for mental health problems. Again, it is a very sad situation, and we're hopeful that we can convince the legislators to give some extra funding to this issue. Y'all have mentioned the criminal aspect of this. Many people in jail have psychiatric issues, and that's why they're in jail in the first place, and they may not be being treated properly for that aspect of their health. So again, a reason we need improved funding for mental health issues. A third priority that we have is expansion of telemedicine, which would go along with your first priority, especially getting help to the rural areas. About 2 sessions ago, our Texas Medical Board worked on finalizing some requirements on what would make a telemedicine type of examination from a physician to be equivalent to that of an office-based visit or emergency department visit, for instance. Little did they know, the Texas Medical Board, little did they know that the pandemic would hit, and we'd go from about 7% of physicians making use of telemedicine to about 87% of physicians. Telemedicine allowed physicians to start seeing patients once the pandemic hit, because of so many reasons. The patients wouldn't come into the office because they were afraid of getting exposed. The physicians didn't have enough of the PPE or personal protective equipment to protect themselves and the patients. The office staff was leery about seeing patients in the office who could bring COVID into them. So telemedicine did allow a way to go ahead and see those patients and allow them to be taken care of. We, of course, need to improve the broadband width and Wi-Fi and all that so it can reach out to the rural areas better. And we're trying to explain to the legislators that a telemedicine visit should be reimbursed to physicians the same as an office visit, especially if an insurance has contracted to pay a certain amount for a visit, then it should correlate with the telemedicine visit. On one hand, the insurance companies are saying, well, it's much easier to do a telemedicine, you should not get paid the same. But we explain to the legislators, because they may not understand, that in order for a patient to be seen by telemedicine, whether it be audio and visual or even just audio, The office staff has to go ahead and confirm their coverage. They have to talk to the patient about what they have available that can be used for an examination. They have to go ahead and set that up for the physician to see them, make that appointment, get everything arranged there. The physician may think that blood studies need to be done or x-rays or something else. So the office staff has to go ahead and schedule that and keep track of that. Then the office staff has to go ahead and bill their insurance for it. The physician spends just as much time with that visit as they would in the office. So we do think that it should be paid in comparison directly to an in-office visit. So those are the things we're working on the telemedicine factor. We do think patients who are disabled or elderly, or indeed in more rural areas where it's much harder for them to get in, will be able to continue to use telemedicine after the pandemic is over. And we are estimating that maybe 18% or 20% of visits will remain as telemedicine, which will be much more helpful to the patients. So that's an important project that we're working on. And please feel free to reach out to the Texas Medical Association with questions or ways that you think that we can work together. And we would love to talk to y'all. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Fight, and thank you to Motiva for sponsoring this session. Finally, we will hear from Courtney Arbor. Mrs. Arbor is the Division Director for Workforce Development at the Texas Workforce Commission. This session is sponsored by International Paper.
Greetings, Golden Triangle Area Economic Development Partners. My name is Courtney Arbor, and I'm the Director of the Workforce Development Division at the Texas Workforce Commission. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. We appreciate the opportunity to highlight some of the ways that the Workforce Commission works with Southeast Texas Workforce Board and other partners in the Golden Triangle area to maintain a strong pipeline of Texas workers of various ages who are prepared and ready to work in the state's many industries. I will also share a little about the state labor market, how we have fared during the pandemic, and a few projects in place that are supportive of the recovery effort. As you know, Texas boasts a broad range of industries with varied needs and resources in different parts of the state. Southeast Texas, like the Permian Basin and other areas, has a significant petrochemical and industrial construction need that is often tied to petrochemical expansion. Texas has been fortunate to maintain a strong workforce and a low unemployment rate for many years. In fact, 6 major industries in Texas enjoyed year-over-year employment growth for over 100 consecutive months prior to COVID-19. Those include construction, trade, transportation, utilities, financial activities, professional and business services, education and health services, and leisure and hospitality. These and other industries represent a wide spectrum of the Texas economy, each demanding different skill sets and the ability to adapt to changing technology and business strategies. According to labor market projections, Southeast Texas will see growth in residential building and construction, boat and shipbuilding, outpatient care facilities, and individual family care services over the next 9 years. You know this because your area has been in build mode for years, with expansions and new construction in refineries, the port, transportation, and many, many ancillary projects related to industry expansion, such as those for apartments, hotels and motels, and retail. The pandemic caused significant business downsizing and closures, both temporary and permanent. From March 2020 to January 2021, the Commission processed almost 7 million unemployment insurance claims, which is more than the previous 5 years combined. That was due to the unprecedented slowdown in our economy. 525,700 jobs were lost January through November of 2020, and for the year, only 2 industries achieved marginal employment growth. Those 2 industries were financial activities, which added 13,300 jobs, and professional and business services, which added 2,800 jobs. There is positive news, however. Texas employers are navigating this pandemic, adjusting to new ways of doing business, and they are hiring. The Commission's mission is to promote and support a workforce system that creates value and offers opportunity to all to achieve and sustain economic prosperity. We accomplish this mission through our Workforce Solutions Network. This Workforce Solutions Network includes the Commission, 28 local workforce development boards operating 182 local workforce centers, 33 adult education grantees, and a large network of vocational rehabilitation professionals and all of this group makes up the Texas Workforce Solutions System. This very large and diverse team delivers integrated services that respond to changing economic conditions and the needs of Texas employers and workers. In 2020, the network served over 96,000 employers and nearly 527,000 individual participants in workforce services. Additionally, 1.1 million job seekers use the workintexas.com job matching system, which was recently modernized to provide more robust self-service job matching and career information options for our customers. The Commission and its local providers train thousands of Texans annually in hundreds of occupations and skills, focusing on the attainment of credentials, including industry-recognized credentials. The Skills Development Fund focuses on partnerships between businesses, public, community, or technical colleges, boards, economic development entities, and TWC. To bring that closer to home, through a skills grant with Lamar State College Orange with employer partner Arancio, 301 workers will be trained. Silsbee ISD was also awarded a JET grant recently, and 125 students will be trained in welding this year. Grants are in place with Lamar State College, Port Arthur, and Lamar Institute of Technology, all supporting training for local businesses and workers. A couple of youth-focused projects in your area are also very exciting. The Next Step program with the Foster Youth Transition Center in Beaumont and the Southeast Texas Board will help youth transitioning from foster care into employment and training. A project between the Workforce Board and JAG helps youth complete high school equivalency, gain access to internships, short-term skills training, and pre-apprenticeships in demand occupations. The Summer Earn and Learn program operated by the board continues to operate annually, providing job readiness and paid work experience linking to education and work experience for students with disabilities age 14 to 22. Last, I will mention that 2019 marked the first ever Career and Technical Education Signing Day, encouraging articulation agreements between high schools and community technical colleges and registered apprenticeship programs. These partnerships promote college affordability with an emphasis on preparing students who are the future of our workforce in Texas for promising careers. With the many grants and resources in place, and by leveraging our partnerships both within the Workforce Solutions, economic development, and education workforce, we are making a difference in the Golden Triangle and in the state. Thank you for all you do to help. For more information about TWC's programs, please visit our website, texasworkforce.org. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
I want to thank Ms. Arbor for her time. I also want to thank International Paper for their support. So this is quite a lineup that you had a chance to see. Hope you came away with it with a good feeling of what's important, or what we feel is important to the Golden Triangle region and our legislative agenda. We think that all those things are important to continue to have our region flourish. Thanks again to our sponsors. I really have to thank all the folks that were involved in this production. And one person I didn't mention already is Jeremy, who's behind the scenes, who made all this stuff happen. We had a lot of twists and turns in this process, including a couple this morning. In the next few days, we're going to make this entire presentation available on all the chamber's websites. So if you missed part of it, you can go back and see it. We'll also be on the Golden Triangle Days website. So you will be able to check that out forever if you'd like. We'll also continue to update our legislative agenda as bills are passed, so you can see the progress that is happening up in Austin and hopefully will affect us down here in Southeast Texas. Everyone, we started with good morning about 3 hours ago, I think, maybe a little more than 3 hours ago. We're going to end with good afternoon, but I hope you feel like in about 3 hours, we really encapsulated Golden Triangle Days from a virtual perspective for you. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.